The message came at 14:32 Greenwich Mean Time on a Tuesday that would change everything. Admiral Sarah Chen was drinking her third cup of coffee when the quantum relay station on Luna began screaming alerts across every screen in the command center. "Admiral, we're getting something on the Deep Space Channel," Lieutenant Rodriguez called out, his voice tight with confusion. It's not from any human source." Sarah set down her coffee cup. In her 23 years of military service, she had never heard those words. The Deep Space Quantum Relay Network was humanity's most advanced communication system, capable of near-instantaneous contact across light years. Only humans were supposed to know how to use it. "Put it on the main screen," she ordered. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a three-dimensional image that made everyone in the room step back. The creature speaking was tall and thin, with skin that shifted between silver and blue. Its eyes were completely black, and when it spoke, the words came through perfect universal translation software that humanity didn't even know existed. "To the dominant species of the third planet from the star you call Sol," the alien began, its voice carrying an authority that had commanded galaxies. "I am High Arbiter HFY of the Hegemony Council. You will listen carefully, as this message will be sent only once." Sarah felt her blood turn cold. Around the command center, officers stopped what they were doing and stared at the impossible sight of humanity's first contact with alien life. The alien continued without emotion. "Your species has reached a level of development that requires integration into the hegemony. This is not a negotiation. This is not a choice. This is a statement of fact that has been delivered to 3,417 species before you." The display changed, showing images that made Sarah's stomach clench. Massive ships that looked more like living creatures than machines floated through space. Planets burned under weapons that turned matter itself against the world it came from. Cities of crystal and metal crumbled as their inhabitants fled in terror. "The hegemony has existed for 12 million of your years," HFY said. "We have brought order to chaos, civilization to barbarism, and peace to war across this galaxy. Your species will submit to our authority, dismantle all military forces, and accept classification as a client species under hegemony protection." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. Client species. The words tasted like poison in her mind. "You have 72 of your hours to signal your complete surrender," the alien continued. "Transmit your acceptance on this same frequency. Any delay will be considered an act of hostility. Any resistance will be met with total elimination, as was demonstrated with the Vexhai." The screen showed a planet that had once been blue and green like Earth. Now it was a ball of glass, perfectly smooth, reflecting starlight like a marble. Sarah could see the shapes of continents beneath the surface, frozen forever in crystal. "Their crime was refusing our generous offer of integration," HFY explained without any trace of regret. "They believed their crystalline technology made them superior to the hegemony. They were wrong. Do not make their mistake." The message ended with coordinates showing massive ships already moving toward the outer edge of the solar system. According to the data, they would arrive in exactly 72 hours. Silence filled the Luna Command Center for exactly 10 seconds. Then every communication device in the room began ringing at once as news of the transmission spread across Earth's military networks. "Sir," Lieutenant Rodriguez said, his voice barely steady, "Earth Command is requesting immediate contact. So is the United Nations, and the Mars colonies, and the Belt Mining Consortium, and—" He stopped, overwhelmed by the flood of incoming calls. Sarah held up one hand for silence. Her mind was racing through protocols that had been written for a day everyone hoped would never come. First contact with hostile aliens, complete technological superiority on the enemy's side, an ultimatum with no room for negotiation. "Rodriguez, send a priority alpha message to all commands," she said, surprised by how calm her own voice sounded. "Tell them to implement protocol blackout immediately. No questions, no delays. Full implementation within the hour." "Ma'am, are you sure? Protocol blackout means—" "I know what it means," Sarah interrupted. She walked to her personal communication terminal and entered a code she had memorized 15 years ago but never thought she would use. Her fingers moved automatically across the quantum-encrypted keyboard, sending a message that would reach every human military installation from the asteroid belt to the moons of Saturn. The message was simple. "The day we prepared for has come. Execute a blackout protocol. Show them nothing. Trust the plan. Humanity endures." Around the solar system, the response was immediate. On Earth, every military base went dark. Communication satellites stopped transmitting. The massive space elevators that connected Earth to its orbital stations powered down their lights. Mars colonies turned off their beacon signals. Mining ships in the asteroid belt shut down their engines and drifted like dead metal. To any outside observer, it would look like humanity was panicking, like their civilization was collapsing under the weight of the alien ultimatum. Ships would appear to be fleeing randomly. Communications would seem to be failing. Military forces would look scattered and disorganized. But Sarah knew better. She had helped write Protocol Blackout during her early years as the intelligence officer, back when deep space monitoring stations first detected the systematic destruction of civilizations in nearby star systems. The protocol wasn't about panic. It was about preparation. Dr. James Okafor appeared on her personal screen, calling from his hidden laboratory in the Kuiper Belt. The man who had designed humanity's response to this exact situation looked tired, but determined. "Sarah, the message went out to all sites," he said. "Activation is proceeding on schedule. The foundries are powering up, the shipyards are dropping their camouflage, and our assets are moving into position." "How long do we have?" Sarah asked. 72 hours until they expect our surrender," James replied. "But our scouts show their advance forces will be in position to attack in 60 hours. "They're not taking any chances," Sarah nodded. "The aliens thought they were dealing with another primitive species that would crumble under pressure. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. Every mining operation in the outer system had been designed with dual purposes. Every commercial space station had hidden weapons. Every seemingly random asteroid had been hollowed out and converted into something the aliens wouldn't see coming." "James, are we really ready for this?" Sarah asked quietly. The scientist was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of humanity's future. "Sarah, they've conquered 3,000 worlds using the same formula. Overwhelming force, a surrender deadline, and the promise of mercy for those who submit immediately. It's worked every time because every species they've faced has been alone." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "But they've never faced humans. They've never faced a species that spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war against itself. They expect us to kneel." Sarah felt a cold smile cross her face. "What are we going to give them instead?" "We're going to give them the Black Armada," James said. "And we're going to teach them that some species don't kneel. Some species fight." The communication ended, leaving Sarah alone with the weight of command and the knowledge that humanity's greatest test was about to begin. Outside the windows of Luna Command, Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, peaceful and beautiful. In 60 hours, that peace would end forever. Captain Thexmol of the Hegemony scout ship, Inevitable Truth, watched the human homeworld through his ship's advanced sensors and felt satisfaction flow through his gill slits. The primitive planet below was reacting exactly as expected. "Report," he commanded his sensor operator, a young Kethai whose scales still showed the bright colors of inexperience. "The electromagnetic signature from the third planet has decreased by 78%, the operator reported. "Their communication networks appear to be failing. We're detecting scattered transmissions that suggest widespread panic among the population centers." Thexmol's tentacles curled in amusement. 3,000 worlds, and they all responded the same way. First came disbelief, then panic, then the desperate scrambling of a species realizing they were completely outmatched. The humans were following the pattern perfectly. "Any sign of military organization?" he asked. "Negative, Captain. Their orbital installations have gone dark. We're tracking multiple ships fleeing toward the outer system, but their movements appear random and uncoordinated. Standard retreat behavior from a species in collapse." Through the viewport, Thexmol could see the first elements of the Hegemony fleet approaching the edge of the human star system. 12 bioships, each one grown rather than built, their living hulls pulsing with the soft light of contained power. The smallest of them was larger than anything the humans had ever constructed. What Thexmol couldn't see were the 17 mining vessels that had been drifting dead in space for the past 6 months, their crews in hibernation, their hulls covered in electromagnetic damping material that made them invisible to Hegemony sensors. As the alien scout ships took their positions, human eyes watched from inside those hollow asteroids, recording every detail of Hegemony technology and tactics. Deep in the Kuiper Belt, Dr. James Okafor stood in what looked like a standard research station, studying ice formation on distant comets. The facility's public records showed it as a small scientific outpost with a crew of 12. The reality was different. "Bring the foundries online," James ordered. The asteroid around him shuddered as massive machinery came to life for the first time. What had appeared to be a natural chunk of ice and rock was actually a hollowed-out shell containing one of the most advanced manufacturing facilities humanity had ever built. Similar installations throughout the outer system began their activation sequences, dropping their camouflage and revealing their true nature. The Darwin station had supposedly been studying Jupiter's moons for the past 8 years. Dr. Elena Vasquez had published dozens of papers on atmospheric composition and magnetic field interactions. What she hadn't published was that the station's real purpose was testing weapons designed specifically to fight in space. "All systems show green," she reported to James over a quantum encrypted channel. "The mass drivers are ready and the particle beam arrays are fully charged. The hegemony ships don't know we exist." "Confirmed, Elena. Hold position until the signal." Similar reports came in from across the solar system. The Hermes Mining Consortium had been extracting rare metals from the asteroid belt for 15 years. Now their mining ships revealed hidden armor plating and weapon systems that had been disguised as ore processing equipment. The New Horizons research platform stopped studying cosmic radiation and began charging the most powerful directed energy weapon ever created by human hands. Commander Alex Petrov floated in zero gravity aboard what the official records listed as a cargo transport named Peaceful Journey. The ship had been hauling supplies between Earth and Mars for 3 years, making regular runs that established it as a harmless civilian vessel. The hegemony scouts had classified it as a non-threat commercial unit and ignored it completely. They had no idea that hidden beneath the cargo bays was enough firepower to level a city, or that Alex's crew consisted of humanity's most experienced military pilots flying under false identities. "Sir, we're receiving activation codes," reported Lieutenant Kim Santos, who was officially listed as a cargo specialist but had actually been trained in zero-gravity combat operations. "Acknowledged. All stations prepare for revelation. This is not a drill." Back on Luna, Admiral Sarah Chen watched the hegemony forces position themselves exactly where humanity's war planners had predicted they would. The aliens were following standard protocols, taking positions that would allow them to control all major shipping lanes, while demonstrating their overwhelming power to the human population below. "Ma'am, we're getting reports from all hidden installations," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. "Everything is online and ready. The Black Armada is prepared for deployment." Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. For 30 years, humanity's best scientists, engineers, and military strategists had worked in secret to prepare for this day. They had studied every piece of intelligence gathered from deep space monitoring, analyzed the destroyed civilizations the hegemony had left behind, and designed weapons and tactics specifically for fighting an enemy with superior technology. The key insight had come from studying historical human conflicts. Time and again, technologically superior forces had been defeated by opponents who understood that technology meant nothing if you couldn't use it effectively. The hegemony had grown complacent through easy victories. They expected their mere presence to break enemy morale. They had never faced an opponent that wanted them to feel confident and superior. Captain Thexmol was reviewing his preliminary report when his sensor operator suddenly stiffened in alarm. "Captain, I'm detecting energy signatures from the outer system. Multiple sources powering up simultaneously. Probably their outer colonies trying to establish communication with the homeworld," Thexmol replied dismissively. "Continue monitoring." What the hegemony sensors detected as communication attempts were actually the first stages of the most coordinated military operation in human history. Across the solar system, hidden installations that had been disguised as research stations, mining operations, and commercial facilities began dropping their facades and revealing their true nature. The asteroid designated 2157 KT had been studied by xenogeologists for 5 years. Now it split open like a flower, revealing a shipyard containing vessels that had been constructed in absolute secrecy. The Titan Atmospheric Research Station stopped studying Saturn's moon and began launching fighter craft that had been stored in underground hangars. Dr. James Okafor smiled as he watched his life's work come to fruition. The hegemony thought they were dealing with a typical planetary species, confined to their home system, and limited by the physics of conventional space travel. They had no idea that humanity had been building in secret for decades, or that every seemingly innocent installation in their star system was actually part of a vast military network designed for one purpose: to turn the hunter into the hunted. Status: report from all stations, he requested. The responses came in from across the solar system. Hidden shipyards were launching their first wave of fighters. Weapon platforms were targeting hegemony scout ships. Most importantly, the trap was ready to spring. All stations report. Ready, James announced to Admiral Chen. The Black Armada is fully deployed and awaiting orders. Sarah looked at the tactical display showing hegemony forces, confident in their superior position, completely unaware that they were surrounded by an enemy they couldn't detect. In 12 hours, the aliens would expect humanity's surrender message. Instead, they were going to discover that some species don't surrender. Some species fight back, and some species have been preparing for war since the day they first learned they weren't alone in the universe. The 72-hour deadline passed at exactly 14:32, Greenwich Mean Time. Captain Thexamol waited on the bridge of inevitable truth, his tentacles drumming against his command chair in anticipation. The human homeworld hung before them, silent and dark. No surrender transmission had come. No plea for mercy. No desperate attempt at negotiation. Standard pattern, he announced to his fleet. They've chosen elimination over integration. Begin the approach to the inner system. We'll glass their homeworld and move on to the next sector. The 12 hegemony bioships began their advance, their living hulls pulsing with contained energy. Each vessel was a work of art, grown over centuries and guided by technology that had conquered a galaxy. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could deflect any known force. They moved with the confidence of beings who had never lost a battle. That confidence lasted exactly 47 minutes. The attack began from everywhere at once. What the hegemony had dismissed as dead asteroids suddenly erupted with engine fire. Space itself seemed to come alive as camouflaged human vessels dropped their stealth fields and revealed their true nature. The mining ship Prospector's Dream shed its disguise to become the heavy cruiser Retribution. The research platform Deep Space Explorer unfolded weapon arrays that had been hidden inside false scientific equipment. Commander Alex Petrov's voice cut across the tactical frequency. All units. This is Blackbird Leader. Execute Thunder Run. Show these aliens what happens when they threaten Earth. His ship, the former cargo transport Peaceful Journey, revealed its true identity as the stealth destroyer Shadowstrike. Along with 17 other vessels that had been masquerading as civilian craft, Alex's squadron struck the hegemony formation from behind, their weapons charging faster than the aliens thought possible. Captain Thexamol stared at his displays in horror as his sensors registered contacts that shouldn't exist. "Where did these ships come from?" he demanded. Our scans showed no military presence. His sensor operator's scales had turned white with shock. "Captain, we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. Ships are appearing from everywhere. It's like they were hiding inside the asteroids themselves. They had been. For months, human crews had lived inside hollowed-out rocks, their ships powered down and their life support systems running on minimal power. They had waited in hibernation while hegemony scouts mapped the system, invisible to sensors that looked for active ships rather than modified asteroids. The first hegemony bioship to die was the Living Harmony, struck by a coordinated strike from 6 human vessels. The aliens' energy shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, proved useless against solid projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds. Kinetic kill vehicles, basically telephone poles made of depleted uranium and accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, punched through the bioship's hull like bullets through paper. "Impossible," Thexmal screamed as he watched Living Harmony break apart. "Their technology is primitive. Their weapons shouldn't be able to penetrate our shields." What he didn't understand was that humans had been studying hegemony technology for decades through deep space observation. They knew exactly how alien shields worked, and they had designed their weapons specifically to defeat them. Energy shields were useless against solid matter moving fast enough, and humans had become very good at making things move very fast. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched from her hidden platform near Jupiter as the Darwin station revealed its true nature. What had appeared to be a small research facility unfolded into a weapons platform larger than some hegemony ships. The massive particle beam cannon she had spent 8 years perfecting locked onto its target and fired. The beam struck the bioship gentle current amidships and burned completely through it. The alien vessel, designed to regenerate from normal weapon damage, simply couldn't heal fast enough to survive having a hole punched through its core systems. Target eliminated, Elena reported with satisfaction. Recharging for second shot. Across the system, the pattern repeated. Hidden human installations revealed themselves and struck with weapons the hegemony had never encountered. Mass drivers hurled chunks of metal at incredible speeds. Swarm missiles that learned from each impact adapted to alien countermeasures. Most devastating of all were the hunter-killer drones that pursued wounded hegemony ships across the system, refusing to let them escape or regroup. Captain Maria Volkov led the first wave of human fighters launched from the secret shipyards. Her squadron of 30 ships had been built specifically for this moment, designed to be fast, maneuverable, and lethal. Unlike the elegant bioships with their curved lines and bioluminescent displays, human fighters were angular, dark, and built for only one purpose: killing things in space. Target the command ship, she ordered her pilots. Cut off the head and the body dies. Her fighters swarmed inevitable truth like angry wasps, too small for the bioship's main weapons to target effectively, but large enough to carry devastating missiles. They struck the hegemony flagship from every angle, their attacks coordinated with inhuman precision. Dexmal felt his ship shudder under the impact of human weapons. Alarms screamed throughout the bridge as systems he had thought invulnerable began failing. "Damage report," he demanded. "Hull breaches on 7 decks," his damage control officer reported, terror clear in his voice. "The humans are using some kind of adaptive weapon system. Our regeneration protocols can't keep up with the damage rate. How is this possible? They're supposed to be a primitive species." What Dexmal didn't understand was that humans were primitive in some ways. They hadn't developed bioships or energy shields or faster-than-light communication. But they had developed something the hegemony had forgotten. During 12 million years of easy victories, the ability to kill efficiently. Every human weapon had been designed by beings who had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war against their own species. They understood tactics, strategy, and most importantly, the psychology of their enemies. They had studied how the hegemony fought, identified their weaknesses, and built an entire military doctrine around exploiting those weaknesses. The bioship Eternal Peace tried to flee toward the edge of the system, its living hull damaged beyond its ability to heal. It didn't make it. Commander Sarah Kim's heavy cruiser Vengeance pursued it across 2 million kilometers, matching every evasive maneuver and slowly closing the distance. When the hegemony ship finally ran out of power, Sarah's crew boarded it and captured the survivors. "We need prisoners for intelligence," she reported to Admiral Chen, "and we need their technology." This was something else the hegemony had never encountered. Previous enemies had fought defensively, trying to protect their homeworlds until they could negotiate surrender. Humans hunted. They pursued damaged ships. They boarded enemy vessels not to rescue survivors, but to capture technology and interrogate prisoners. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the battle from Luna Command, coordinating the attack with cold precision. The tactical display showed hegemony forces scattered and demoralized, their formation broken by attacks from directions they hadn't known existed. "Status report," she requested. 7 hegemony vessels destroyed, 3 captured, 2 fleeing toward the edge of the system, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. "Our losses are minimal. The aliens can't adapt to our tactics fast enough." Sarah nodded. The hegemony had expected to fight another defensive battle against a terrified species. Instead, they were facing an enemy that had turned their own star system into a weapon. Every asteroid could hide a ship. Every piece of space debris could be a disguised weapon platform. Every seemingly innocent research station could reveal itself as a fortress. As the remaining hegemony ships fled toward the outer system, human forces pursued them with relentless efficiency. The aliens had come to Earth expecting to receive a surrender. Instead, they had learned that some species don't kneel, some species fight back, and some species have been preparing for war since the day they realized they weren't alone in the universe. The Black Armada had risen, and the hegemony's 12 million years of easy conquest had just come to an end. High Arbiter HFY stood in the central chamber of the Hegemony Council, his silver-blue skin flickering with patterns of confusion and disbelief. Around him, the representatives of 12 ancient civilizations watched the tactical displays with growing horror. "Explain to me," HFY said, his voice carrying the authority of 12 million years of conquest, "how a primitive species destroyed 8 of our bioships and captured 3 more in less than 6 hours. The Keth High military coordinator, General Vashtok, struggled to find words. "High Arbiter, their tactics are unlike anything we've encountered. They don't fight defensively, they hunt. When our ships try to retreat and regroup, human vessels pursue them across the entire system." "Pursue them how?" "Our intelligence indicated they were confined to their home system with primitive chemical rockets. That intelligence was wrong, sir. They've been building in secret for decades. Every asteroid in their system could be hiding ships. Every research station could be a weapons platform. They turned their entire star system into a fortress, and we walked right into it." HFY's black eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the remains of what had been the most powerful military force in the galaxy. "Show me how they fight." The hologram displayed the battle footage captured by the fleeing hegemony ships. HFY watched human vessels emerge from what had appeared to be dead space, their movements coordinated with machine-like precision. Unlike the graceful bioships that danced through space like living creatures, human vessels moved like predators, angular and purpose-built for killing. "They use kinetic weapons," General Vashtok explained. "Solid projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds. Our energy shields are useless against them. And when we tried to retreat, they followed. Human ships pursued our damaged vessels across millions of kilometers. When the Eternal Peace ran out of power, they boarded it and captured the crew. Not for rescue, High Arbiter. For interrogation." HFY felt something he hadn't experienced in his 3,000-year lifespan. Fear. "What do they want with our technology?" "To learn how to kill us more efficiently, sir." Meanwhile, in the wreckage-strewn space around Earth, the Black Armada was doing exactly that. Commander Alex Petrov floated in the command center of the captured bioship Gentle Current. Watching human technicians strip away alien technology with ruthless efficiency. "Report," he ordered. Dr. Lisa Chen, the xenotechnology specialist, looked up from where she was studying a piece of hegemony equipment that still pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. "Their ships are incredible, Commander. Self-healing hulls, quantum-entangled communication systems, weapons that can crack planets. But they have a critical weakness, which is arrogance. Their entire military doctrine is based on overwhelming technological superiority. They've never had to develop real tactics because they've never faced effective resistance. Their ships are powerful, but they're predictable." Alex nodded. That predictability had been humanity's greatest advantage. The hegemony fought the same way against every enemy. Approach the system, demonstrate overwhelming force, accept surrender or destroy the planet. They had used the same tactics for 12 million years because those tactics had always worked. But humans were different. Humans had spent 10,000 years fighting other humans, beings just as intelligent and resourceful as themselves. They understood deception, misdirection, and most importantly, they understood that any enemy could be defeated if you were willing to pay the price. Captain Maria Volkov's fighter squadron was demonstrating that principle in the asteroid belt, where the last 2 hegemony bioships were trying to hide among the floating rocks. The aliens thought they could use the asteroids for cover, the same way they had hidden among gas clouds and debris fields in previous campaigns. They hadn't counted on the fact that humans had been living and working in the asteroid belt for decades. Every rock was mapped. Every gravitational current was charted. What looked like random space debris to the hegemony was actually a carefully controlled environment where humans held every advantage. "Blackbird Squadron. This is Hawk Leader," Maria announced over the tactical frequency. "Target bearing 27 Mark 8 is hiding behind asteroid designation Romeo 7. But Romeo 7 isn't natural. It's been hollowed out and converted to a weapons platform. When I mark, Romeo 7 will light up the target like a Christmas tree." The hegemony ship. Peaceful Integration thought it was safely hidden behind a large asteroid, its bioluminescent hull powered down to minimal levels. The ship's captain, HFY, was reporting to his superiors that they had found a secure position to await rescue. He was still transmitting when the asteroid suddenly blazed with weapon fire. What had appeared to be a natural chunk of rock revealed itself as another human installation, striking the bioship from point-blank range with weapons designed specifically for close-range combat. "Impossible," HFY screamed as his ship's hull began to fail. How can they be everywhere? The answer was simple. Humans had been preparing for this war for 30 years. Every mining operation had been designed with dual purposes. Every research station had hidden weapons. Every seemingly innocent piece of space infrastructure had been built to kill hegemony ships. Dr. James Okafor monitored the battle from his command center in the Kuiper Belt, coordinating the activities of installations scattered across the solar system. The tactical display showed human forces systematically hunting down the remaining hegemony ships, denying them any chance to escape or regroup. Status report from all stations, he requested. The responses came in from across the solar system. Human forces had taken control of every major shipping lane. Captured hegemony technology was being analyzed and reverse-engineered at hidden research facilities. Most importantly, the quantum communication equipment from the captured ships was being used to monitor hegemony military communications. Dr. Okafor, reported his intelligence officer, were intercepting communications from the Hegemony Council. They're sending reinforcements. 3 full battle fleets, over 100 ships. James smiled coldly. Let them come. We'll be ready. The preparation was already beginning. Human shipyards that had been disguised as mining operations were working around the clock to produce more vessels. The captured hegemony technology was being integrated into new weapon systems. Most importantly, human forces were learning to think like their enemies. Admiral Sarah Chen received the intelligence report on Luna and immediately began planning humanity's next move. The hegemony thought they were dealing with a defensive species that would try to protect their homeworld. They had no idea that humans were already planning to take the war to enemy territory. Rodriguez, prepare a transmission to all commands, she ordered. We're going to do something the hegemony has never seen before. We're going to attack them, ma'am. For 12 million years, the hegemony has fought the same war over and over. They show up, demand surrender, and either accept submission or destroy the planet. They've never had to defend their own territory because no one has ever been able to strike back. Sarah turned to look at the tactical display showing human forces scattered throughout the solar system, no longer hiding but actively hunting the remnants of the hegemony fleet. That's about to change. We're not going to wait for them to bring more ships to Earth. We're going to follow their survivors home and show them what it feels like to be hunted. The last hegemony bioship in the solar system, the Eternal Wisdom, was running for the edge of the system at maximum speed, its crew desperate to reach the jump point and escape to hegemony space. They almost made it. Commander Sarah Kim's heavy cruiser Vengeance caught them just as they reached the heliopause, the boundary between the solar system and interstellar space. Instead of simply destroying the fleeing ship, Kim's crew disabled its engines and boarded it, capturing the survivors and all their intelligence. This is Vengeance to Fleet Command, Kim reported. We have captured the ship's navigation data. We know how to reach hegemony space. The message that reached the Hegemony Council 3 days later was not what they expected. Instead of a plea for mercy or a desperate attempt at negotiation, they received something unprecedented in their 12 million years of conquest. A declaration of war. To the Hegemony Council, Admiral Sarah Chen's voice came through their own quantum communication network. Hijacked by captured alien technology, you ordered Earth to kneel. You threatened our children and our future. You believed your superior technology made you invincible. The image showed not a broken planet begging for mercy, but a military commander speaking from the bridge of a warship. You were wrong. Humanity does not kneel. Humanity fights. And now we're coming for you. The transmission ended with coordinates showing human ships already moving beyond the edge of the solar system, carrying the war to hegemony space for the first time in their civilization's history. The hunters had become the hunted. 6 months after the ultimatum that was supposed to end with humanity's surrender, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Indomitable and watched hegemony space burn. The massive human warship hung in the void above what had once been the hegemony's most important military depot, a space station the size of a small moon that had coordinated the conquest of 1,000 worlds. Now it was the expanding cloud of debris, destroyed by weapons the aliens still didn't understand. Status report, Sarah requested. Commander Alex Petrov, now promoted to her tactical coordinator, studied the holographic displays showing the positions of human forces throughout the sector. Hegemony Depot 7 is completely destroyed. Their local defense fleet has been eliminated, We've captured 3 more bioships and their crews. Most importantly, we've captured their communication arrays. Sarah nodded with satisfaction. The communication arrays were the key to everything. For the first time in 12 million years, the hegemony was learning what it felt like to have their own technology used against them. Human forces were using captured quantum communication equipment to intercept alien military transmissions, coordinate false information campaigns, and most devastatingly, broadcast messages that were shattering the hegemony's carefully maintained image of invincibility. "Show me the intelligence reports," Sarah ordered. The holographic display changed to show a map of hegemony space, with dozens of star systems marked in different colors. Red indicated systems under hegemony control. Blue showed systems where human forces were operating. But most interesting were the yellow markers, indicating something unprecedented: rebellion. Dr. James Okafor appeared on the communication screen, calling from the captured hegemony research facility he was now using as his base of operations. "Sarah, the psychological warfare campaign is working better than we hoped. 17 client species have declared independence from the hegemony in the past month. They're calling themselves the Liberation Alliance. What changed their minds? Us. For 12 million years, the hegemony told their client species that resistance was impossible, that their technology was so advanced that rebellion would only result in complete annihilation. We proved that was a lie. The truth was spreading across the galaxy faster than the hegemony could suppress it. Humanity had done the impossible. They had defeated hegemony forces using inferior technology and superior tactics. More importantly, they had carried the war to hegemony space and won. On the former hegemony world of Kethamar, a young alien named HFY looked up at the night sky where strange new stars blazed with unnatural light. The hegemony officials said they were stellar phenomena, but everyone knew the truth. Those were human ships fighting hegemony forces, and the humans were winning. Are the stories true? HFY asked her elder, an old Kethai whose scales bore the scars of hegemony pacification operations from decades past. Which stories, young one? About the Terrans, about the species that refused to kneel. The elder's gill slits fluttered with what might have been hope. I have heard that when the hegemony came to their system and demanded surrender, the humans sent warships instead. I have heard that they turned space itself into a weapon, that they hunt hegemony bioships across the galaxy like predators pursuing prey. Is it possible? Can the hegemony really be defeated? Before the elder could answer, the night sky lit up with the distinctive blue-white flash of human quantum torpedoes destroying a hegemony patrol ship in orbit. The explosion was visible across the entire continent, a message written in fire across the heavens. Resistance was not only possible, it was happening. Similar scenes were playing out across hundreds of worlds as the news of humanity's victories spread. Species that had submitted to hegemony rule decades or centuries ago were remembering what it felt like to be free. More importantly, they were learning that the supposedly invincible hegemony could be defeated. High Arbiter HFY stood in the emergency session of the Hegemony Council, his silver-blue skin now showing patterns of deep concern. Around him, the representatives of 12 ancient civilizations faced a crisis none of them had ever imagined. Their empire was collapsing, Port. From the front lines, he demanded. General Vashituk's scales had turned completely white with stress. High Arbiter, we've lost contact with Sectors 7 through 12. Human forces have destroyed our communication networks and are systematically eliminating our military installations. Worse, 17 client species have declared independence and are actively supporting human operations. How is this possible? They're a single species from one star system. Yes, sir. But they fight differently than anything we've encountered. They don't try to hold territory or protect specific locations. They strike our supply lines, destroy our communication networks, and disappear before we can respond. When we send ships to hunt them, they ambush our forces using tactics we don't understand. What the hegemony didn't understand was that humans had been preparing for asymmetric warfare for their entire existence. They knew how to fight an enemy with superior resources because they had been doing it to each other for 10,000 years. They understood that technology meant nothing if you couldn't use it effectively, and they had built their entire military doctrine around exploiting that weakness. Captain Maria Volkov demonstrated that principle perfectly as she led her squadron in an attack on the hegemony stronghold at Sigma Draconis. The alien fortress was protected by energy shields that could deflect any known weapon, and defended by bioships that outnumbered her forces 3-1. It didn't matter. Maria's ships didn't attack the fortress directly. Instead, they targeted the asteroid mining operation that supplied the base with raw materials, the communication relay that coordinated its defenses, and the fuel depot that powered its ships. Within 6 hours, the supposedly impregnable fortress was isolated, blinded, and starving. "This is Captain Volkov to Hegemony Fortress Command," she transmitted on an open channel. "You have 1 hour to surrender before we turn your pretty fortress into scrap metal. Your choice." The fortress surrendered without firing a shot. It was the first time in Hegemony history that one of their military installations had capitulated to an enemy force. The psychological impact was devastating. If a Hegemony fortress could surrender, then anything was possible. The news spread across the galaxy, carried by the same quantum communication networks the Hegemony had used to coordinate their empire. Now those networks carried a different message. Humanity was winning, and the age of Hegemony dominance was ending. Admiral Sarah Chen received the final intelligence report as human forces prepared for their most ambitious operation yet, a direct assault on the Hegemony homeworld itself. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from 47 Hegemony worlds. They're offering to switch sides and join the Liberation Alliance. And the Hegemony Council? They're in complete disarray. Half of them want to negotiate peace terms. The other half want to use planet-killer weapons against Earth." Sarah smiled coldly. "Let them try. We're not on Earth anymore, it was true." The Black Armada had evolved beyond its original defensive mission. Human shipyards, now established in captured Hegemony systems, were producing vessels that combined human tactical innovation with alien technology. The new ships were faster, more powerful, and more deadly than anything either species had built alone. More importantly, humanity was no longer fighting alone. The Liberation Alliance now included over 100 species, all united by a simple principle: the right to exist free from Hegemony control. The final battle came not as a massive fleet engagement, but as something much more devastating: a coordinated uprising across the entire Hegemony empire. Client species that had been suppressed for millions of years rose up simultaneously, supported by human weapons and tactics. The Hegemony's own size became their weakness as they found themselves fighting rebellions on 1,000 worlds at once. High Arbiter. HFY's last transmission was received on Earth 6 months later, carried by a human ship returning from the former Hegemony capital. "To the humans of Earth," the message began, the once proud alien leader now speaking from what was clearly a prison cell. "You have accomplished something we believed impossible. You have shown the galaxy that freedom is stronger than fear, that determination can overcome any technology, and that some species will never kneel." The transmission ended with a simple statement that would be remembered across the galaxy for millennia. "We surrender. Teach us how to be free." Sarah Chen read the message while standing on the observation deck of Luna Command, looking out at the same view of Earth that had watched her species receive the Hegemony's ultimatum over a year ago. The blue planet still hung in space like a jewel, but now it was the capital of a new kind of empire, one built on cooperation rather than conquest, on freedom rather than fear. "Admiral," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, "we're receiving applications for membership in the Liberation Alliance from over 300 species. They all want to learn human tactics and philosophy." Sarah nodded. The message had been sent and received across the galaxy. When the powerful demanded submission, some species knelt. Others ran. Others hid. Thank you for watching, and comment for next part. The Vrin Hegemony had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. Their crystalline ships moved through space like floating cities of light. Every species in the known universe bowed before them. The Vrin were not cruel masters, but they were absolute ones. They had technology that made other races look like children playing with sticks. Humanity arrived in this universe 73 years ago. They came in small ships with hopes of friendship. The Vrin looked at these newcomers and saw nothing special. Humans were soft creatures. They had no natural armor. They could not survive in hard radiation. Their lifespans were short. The Vrin gave humanity a simple choice: accept your place or face destruction. So humanity accepted. They took the mining worlds. They grew food on agricultural planets. They built their small colonies in the corners of the galaxy where nobody else wanted to live. The humans worked hard and asked for little. They seemed content with their lot. The Vryn stopped paying attention to them after a few decades. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UHSV Indomitable. Her ship was officially listed as a research vessel. It had plain gray walls and simple controls. To anyone looking from outside, it appeared to be just another human cargo ship. This was exactly what humanity wanted the Vryn to think. Sarah was 52 years old. Her hair had gone gray years ago. She had deep lines around her eyes from too many years in space. She had been there when the Vryn first contacted Earth. She remembered the excitement. She also remembered when that excitement turned to disappointment, then fear, then quiet anger. 20 years ago, Sarah lost her daughter. The Vryn came to a human mining station and found the workers trying to organize. They wanted better conditions. The Vryn considered this rebellion. They destroyed the entire station. 4,000 people died. Among them was Maya Chen, age 19. Sarah never forgot. She also never stopped working. She became a ship captain. She studied Vryn technology. She learned everything she could about their weaknesses. And she waited. The call came on a Tuesday morning, station time. New Terra was burning. The colony had 4 million people. They had asked the Galactic Council for fair trade agreements. They wanted to sell their crops at market prices instead of the fixed rates the Vryn demanded. It was a reasonable request. It was also the last request they ever made. The Vryn fleet appeared without warning. 6 warships, each the size of a small moon. They fired once. The planet's shields lasted 3 seconds. Then the atmosphere started burning. By the time Sarah received the distress signal, it was already over. The Indomitable arrived 6 hours later. The crew stood in silence as they watched the planet below. New Terra was a blackened ball of rock. The oceans had boiled away. The cities were glass. There were no survivors. There was nothing left to save. Sarah's communications officer, a young woman named Rita Park, spoke quietly. Her voice shook. She said that her sister lived on New Terra. She said past tense. Lived. Around the bridge, Sarah saw similar faces. Everyone had lost someone, maybe not on New Terra specifically, but somewhere. Some station, some colony, some family member who made the mistake of thinking they deserved basic dignity. The proper procedure was clear. Return to Earth. Report what happened. File an official protest with the Galactic Council. Wait for nothing to change. That was what a good captain would do. Sarah Chen had never been particularly good at following procedures. She turned to her crew. She told them there was another option. They could run, or they could fight. Fighting meant death. It probably meant death for nothing. The Indomitable was 1 ship. The Vryn had 10,000. The math was simple and cruel, but Sarah had spent 20 years preparing for this moment. The Indomitable was not really a research vessel. Hidden beneath the plain exterior were weapons humanity had built in secret. Railguns that could fire metal slugs at nearly light speed. Fusion drives that could outrun most Vryn ships. An artificial intelligence named Archon that could think faster than any organic mind. They had one advantage. The Vryn thought they knew humanity. They thought humans were weak, scared, broken. The Vryn had no idea what desperate people could do. Sarah's executive officer, Commander James Rivera, was a practical man. He asked what 1 ship could do against an empire. He asked if she was really willing to throw away 147 lives for revenge. Sarah looked at the dead planet below. She thought about her daughter. She thought about 4 million people who died for asking to be treated fairly. Then she answered, "This was not revenge," she said. "This was a message. Humanity needed to show the galaxy something. They needed to prove that humans were not slaves. They were not cattle. They were not things to be used and discarded. If the Indomitable died making that statement, then at least they died as free people." She put it to a vote. Every crew member had a choice. They could take the escape pods back to human space, or they could stay and fight. No judgment either way. This was not a military operation. This was something else. Something humanity had never tried before. The vote took 5 minutes. It was unanimous. Every single person chose to stay. Sarah nodded. She had expected this. These people had all volunteered for the Indomitable's crew. They had all known, on some level, what the ship really was. They had all been waiting for this day. She gave the order. Plot a course for the neutral zones. Bring all weapons online. Wake up Archon fully. They had work to do. As the Indomitable turned away from New Terra's corpse, Sarah allowed herself one moment of grief. Then she pushed it down. There would be time for mourning later. Maybe. Probably not. But right now she had a war to start. One human ship against a galactic empire. It was insane. It was impossible. It was also the only thing left to do. The Vryn had ruled for 12,000 years. They were about to learn that empires, no matter how powerful, could fall. Sometimes all it took was one person who refused to bow. Sometimes all it took was 147 people who decided enough was enough. The galaxy was about to change. The Vryn just did not know it yet. The Indomitable traveled through uncharted space for 3 weeks. The neutral zones were areas between claimed territories. No government controlled them. Pirates and refugees lived there. It was the one place the Vryn rarely looked. Sarah spent those weeks reviewing everything they knew about Vryn technology. The crystalline beings coordinated through a psychic network. Every Vryn ship was connected to every other. This made them incredibly efficient in battle. When one ship learned something, all ships knew it instantly. But Sarah had begun to suspect this strength was also a weakness. If all Vryn felt what each other felt, then pain would spread through them like wildfire. Fear would multiply. One panicking Vryn would cause others to panic. The network that made them strong could also break them. Archon agreed. The artificial intelligence had been analyzing Vryn battle patterns for years. It found something interesting. When Vryn ships took unexpected damage, their response time slowed by 0.3 seconds. That was how long it took for the shock to pass through the network and for coordination to resume. 0.3 seconds was not much. But in combat, it could mean everything. The crew worked 16-hour days preparing the ship. Engineers converted cargo bays into weapon mounts. They stripped out everything not essential to combat. Furniture, personal belongings, comfort systems all went out the airlocks. The Indomitable became a weapon with a crew, nothing more. Sarah walked the corridors during night shifts. She saw crew members recording messages home. She did not stop them. Everyone knew the odds. Everyone understood they were probably going to die. But they kept working anyway. Humans were strange that way. Even facing certain death, they could not stop trying. On the 14th day, they encountered something unexpected. A small ship appeared on sensors. It was badly damaged and leaking atmosphere. Sarah ordered the Indomitable to intercept. They brought the ship into the cargo bay and found 3 Keleth inside. The Keleth were a reptilian species. They had scales like emeralds and eyes that saw in multiple spectrums. The Vryn had conquered their homeworld 200 years ago. Since then, the Keleth served as laborers and technicians throughout the hegemony. They were considered loyal subjects. The leader of the 3 called himself Sikthar. He spoke through a translation device in broken but understandable human language. He asked why humans helped them. Sarah said it was the right thing to do. Sikthar made a sound like grinding stones. It was Keleth laughter. He told Sarah that his people watched humans carefully. Everyone watched humans. The entire galaxy wondered when humanity would finally break. When they would stop accepting. When they would fight. Eskithar said his people had a saying, "Even the smallest flame can start a great fire." Sarah asked him a direct question. If humans struck at the Vryn, would others join them? Skithar's eyes went dark. He said that depends on whether humans can hurt the Vryn. Show us they can bleed, he said. Show the galaxy the Vryn are not invincible. Then you will have more allies than you can count. Before the Keleth left in a repaired escape pod, Skithar gave Sarah a gift. It was a data crystal containing detailed information about Vryn fleet movements. He explained that his people had been tracking the hegemony fleet for decades. They could not use this information themselves. but maybe humans could. The crystal revealed something important. Once every 5 years, the Vryn held a ceremony called the Grand Alignment. Their entire fleet gathered at Epsilon Crossing, a massive space station. They arranged their ships in perfect formation and renewed their oaths to the High Council. During this time, their attention turned inward. Their guard dropped slightly. It was the closest thing to vulnerability the Vryn ever showed. The next Grand Alignment was in 3 weeks. Sarah called a meeting of senior officers. She laid out the facts. 3,000 Vryn warships would be in one place. Their shields would be lowered for the ceremony. Their attention would be elsewhere. It was the best opportunity humanity would ever get. It was also complete suicide. Commander Rivera pointed out the obvious. Even if they destroyed 100 Vryn ships, it would accomplish nothing. The hegemony had 10,000 vessels. They would hunt down the Indomitable and everyone would die for nothing. Sarah shook her head. They were not trying to win a war, she explained. They were trying to change minds. The Vryn controlled the galaxy through fear and myth. Everyone believed they were unbeatable. If one human ship could strike at their sacred ceremony, if 147 people could bloody the nose of an empire, then the myth would crack. Other species would see. They would understand the Vryn could be hurt, and then maybe they would find their own courage. The chief engineer, a woman named Dr. Yuki Tanaka, asked about the crew. Did they have a right to throw away these lives? Sarah said she would put it to another vote. Anyone who wanted to leave could take an escape pod. She would not think less of them. The vote happened that evening. This time it was not unanimous. 3 people chose to leave. Sarah helped them prepare their escape pods personally. She thanked them for their service. She told them to tell Earth what happened here. Someone needed to remember. The remaining 144 crew members began final preparations. They trained in combat simulations. They studied Vryn ship layouts. They memorized contingency plans and backup contingency plans. Archon worked 24 hours a day calculating approach vectors and firing solutions. Sarah spent her nights alone in her quarters. She recorded a message to Earth. She explained what they were doing and why. She talked about her daughter Maya. She talked about New Terra. She talked about the 400 species living under Vryn rule, all of them waiting for someone to show them rebellion was possible. She ended the message with words she hoped would matter. We are not terrorists, she said. We are not suicidal. We are people who believe that freedom is worth dying for. We are people who refuse to live on our knees. If you remember nothing else about us, remember that we chose this. We chose to stand. The day before they reached Epsilon Crossing, the crew held a ceremony. It was not religious exactly. Humans had 100 different religions and no religions. But they needed to mark this moment somehow. They gathered in the cargo bay, the largest open space on the ship. People told stories. The communications officer spoke about her sister on New Terra. The navigator talked about his father who died in a mining accident when safety equipment failed. The doctor described a plague that swept through a human colony while Vryn ships orbited overhead, watching but not helping. Every person had a story. Every person had a reason. They were not heroes from ancient myths. They were ordinary people pushed too far, and maybe that was what heroes actually were. Sarah stood and spoke last. She told them the truth. Most of them would die. Maybe all of them. But they would die having done something that mattered. They would die having sent a message that would echo through the galaxy for generations. Future humans would look back at this moment and know that their ancestors never gave up, never accepted, never bowed. The crew cheered. It was not a happy sound. It was the sound of people accepting their fate and choosing to face it with dignity. The next morning, the Indomitable dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Epsilon Crossing system. Sensors immediately lit up with contacts. 3,000 Vryn warships hung in perfect geometric patterns around the station. They looked like a crystal forest in space, beautiful and deadly. Sarah sat in the captain's chair and looked at the display. One small human ship faced the might of an empire. It was the most lopsided battle in history. It was also the beginning of something new. She gave the order. All hands to battle stations. Charge weapons. Prepare to engage. The Indomitable turned toward the Vryn fleet and began its approach. The humans were coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Vryn noticed the Indomitable immediately. How could they not? The ship appeared on sensors like a small insect landing on a table full of giants. The Vryn fleet's automated systems flagged it as an unknown vessel and sent an identification request. Sarah ignored the request. The Indomitable continued its approach. Engines at maximum efficiency. Weapons powered but not yet active. She needed to get closer. Much closer. A second message came through. This time it was not automated. A Vryn commander spoke in their crystalline language. The translation came through flat and emotionless. You are in restricted space. Identify yourself or be destroyed. Sarah opened a channel. She spoke clearly and calmly. This is the UHSV Indomitable of Earth. We are responding to your attack on New Terra. We are here to deliver humanity's answer. There was a pause. Sarah imagined confusion spreading through the Vryn network. A human ship. One human ship. Coming to challenge 3,000 warships. It must be a mistake. Some kind of malfunction. Or perhaps a trick, the Vryn commander responded. You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. This is your only warning. Sarah looked at her crew. Every face was calm. Every hand was steady. They had made their choice. Now came the hard part. She gave the order. Fire. The Indomitable's railguns opened up. These were not energy weapons. The Vryn had shields specifically designed to deflect lasers and plasma, but railguns fired solid metal at incredible speeds. The physics were simple. Mass times velocity equals force, and the Indomitable's slugs traveled at 30% the speed of light. The first salvo hit 3 Vryn command carriers. The shields flickered but did nothing. They were not designed for kinetic impacts. The metal slugs punched through crystal hulls like they were paper. The carriers exploded in brilliant flashes of light. For exactly 0.3 seconds, the Vryn fleet froze. Sarah felt a savage satisfaction. Archon had been right. The shock of unexpected damage paralyzed them. 3 seconds was all the Indomitable needed. The human ship dove toward the fleet formation. Its engines burned brighter than any Vryn ship could manage. The Indomitable was small and fast. It darted between the massive crystal vessels like a bird flying through a forest, and everywhere it went it fired. More Vryn ships died. Destroyers, cruisers, support vessels. The railguns kept firing until the barrels glowed red-hot. Then they fired some more. Sarah watched the kill count climb on her display. 10 ships, 20, 30. The Vryn finally reacted. Their formations broke apart as ships tried to bring weapons to bear. But they were packed too tightly for the ceremony. They had to worry about hitting each other. The Indomitable had no such concerns. It only had one target. Everything with a Vryn transponder. Archon guided the ship through the chaos. The artificial intelligence calculated trajectories faster than any organic mind could process. It predicted where Vryn ships would be 3 seconds before they got there. It found gaps in the defensive fire that should not have existed. It turned a suicide charge into something almost like a dance. But the Indomitable could not avoid everything. Vryn energy weapons found their mark. The human ship's shields held for the first dozen hits. Then they started to fail. Hull breaches appeared across 3 decks. 17 crew members died when a plasma bolt cut through the port side. The ship shuddered and kept flying. Sarah's tactical officer called out damage reports. Port engines at 60%. Forward shields gone. Hull integrity dropping. The ship was dying around them. But it was taking so many Vryn ships with it. The kill count passed 50. Then 60. Then 70. Each destroyed Vryn ship sent another wave of shock and fear through their psychic network. Sarah could almost feel it, even though she was not connected. The Vryn were panicking. They had never experienced this before. Not in 12,000 years. Defeat was a concept they understood intellectually but had never felt. Now they felt it. They tasted it, and it terrified them. The Vryn fleet committed everything. 600 warships broke formation and converged on the Indomitable's position. They did not care about the ceremony anymore. They did not care about formation or tactics. They just wanted this human ship dead. Sarah knew they could not win. That had never been the goal, but they could do one more thing. Something the Vryn would never forget. Something the entire galaxy would witness. She ordered Archon to broadcast on all frequencies. Every species in the galaxy monitored certain channels. Trade channels. Emergency channels. Diplomatic channels. The message would reach everyone. Sarah spoke into the microphone. Her voice was steady. She said that humanity had a message for the Vryn hegemony. They had a message for every species watching. 147 humans on one ship had destroyed 89 Vryn warships. They proved that Vryn could bleed. They proved that Vryn could die. She asked a question. How many more ships would it take? How many more humans willing to fight? The Vryn had 10,000 vessels. Humanity had billions of people. Do the math, she said. Do the math and be afraid. The message went out across the galaxy. On 400 worlds, subjugated species heard it. In stations and colonies and secret meeting places, people stopped what they were doing and listened. A human captain was challenging an empire. A human ship was winning against impossible odds. The message changed everything. Not immediately, not obviously, but something shifted in the collective consciousness of the galaxy. A myth died, the myth of Vryn invincibility, and when a myth dies, revolution becomes possible. On the Indomitable, alarms screamed. The ship was falling apart. Main power was failing. Life support was down to backup systems. The crew worked frantically to keep the vessel flying for just a few more minutes. Commander Rivera reported that the fusion core was becoming unstable. They were losing containment. If it breached, the explosion would destroy the ship. Sarah nodded. She had expected this. She had planned for this. She gave her final order. All crew to escape pods immediately. That was not a request. That was a command from their captain. The crew hesitated. Nobody wanted to abandon ship, but Sarah made it clear. They had delivered the message. Now they needed survivors to tell the story. Go, she said. That is an order. The crew began evacuating. They moved quickly but not frantically. They were professionals even at the end. Sarah stayed on the bridge with a skeleton crew of volunteers. Commander Rivera, Dr. Tanaka, and 15 others who refused to leave. Someone had to keep the ship flying long enough for the others to escape. Sarah programmed the final course herself. The Indomitable would not just die. It would take as many Vryn ships with it as possible. She aimed for the Eternal Radiance, the flagship of the Vryn High Council. It was the largest ship in the fleet, and it hung in the center of the formation like a crystal palace. The escape pods launched. 89 of them scattered into space. The Vryn fleet was too focused on the Indomitable to pay attention to small pods. The humans drifted away into the darkness, watching their ship make its final run. Sarah pushed the engines to absolute maximum. The Indomitable accelerated toward the Eternal Radiance. Vryn ships fired everything they had. Energy weapons tore through the human vessel. Compartments exploded. Bulkheads collapsed, but the ship kept going. Commander Rivera held the engine containment together by sheer force of will and skill. Dr. Tanaka kept the navigation systems online when they should have failed. The other volunteers worked their stations even as the bridge filled with smoke and sparks. In the final seconds, Sarah thought about her daughter. She thought about New Terra. She thought about every human who ever suffered under Vryn rule. Then she thought about the future. The future they had just made possible. The Indomitable struck the Eternal Radiance at 40% the speed of light. The impact alone would have been devastating. But the fusion core breached at the moment of collision. For one brief instant, a new star was born in the heart of the Vryn fleet. The explosion consumed everything within 1,000 kilometers. The Eternal Radiance simply ceased to exist. So did the Indomitable. So did 300 Vryn warships that were too close to escape. The blast wave continued outward, damaging hundreds more vessels. In that explosion, the entire Vryn High Council died. 12 leaders who had ruled for centuries. Gone in an instant. The psychic network that connected all Vryn shattered under the weight of so much simultaneous death. Across the galaxy, Vryn felt the loss like a physical blow. The escape pods drifted in the aftermath. Inside them, 89 humans watched the light fade. They had survived. Not all of them. 58 of their friends died on the ship. But 89 lived, and they would remember. The galaxy watched too. The battle had been broadcast on every channel. Everyone saw what happened. One human ship destroyed 400 Vryn vessels. One human captain challenged an empire and made it bleed. The Vryn hegemony would never be the same. The humans would never be the same. The galaxy would never be the same. A tide had turned, and it could not be stopped. The escape pods drifted through the debris field for 3 hours before help arrived. It came from an unexpected source. Keleth ships emerged from hyperspace and began collecting the human survivors. Siskathar himself commanded the rescue fleet. He told the humans they had done the impossible. Now it was time to see what happened next. The Vryn fleet at Epsilon Crossing was in chaos. Their High Council was dead. Their formation was shattered. Ships fled in every direction, some back to their home territories, others to nearby stations. The psychic network struggled to recover from the trauma. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Vryn did not know what to do. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. Every species heard the story. 1 human ship, 3,000 Vryn vessels, 400 destroyed. The numbers seemed impossible, but thousands of witnesses confirmed them. The broadcast showed everything. There was no denying what happened. Reactions varied by species. Some were terrified. If humans could do this, what else were they capable of? Others were inspired. If humans could fight back successfully, maybe they could too. A few stayed neutral, waiting to see how the situation developed. But nobody could ignore it. The Keleth were the first to act. Within a week of the battle, 17 Keleth colonies declared independence from the hegemony. They armed their defense stations and prepared for retaliation. When Vryn ships arrived to reassert control, they found something unexpected. The Keleth were ready. More than that, they were angry. The first battle happened at Keleth Prime, the homeworld. 3 Vryn cruisers faced a ragtag defense fleet of mining ships and converted transports. It should have been a massacre. Instead, the Keleth used tactics they learned from watching the Indomitables' final fight. They were fast. They were unpredictable. They targeted specific systems instead of trying to destroy entire ships, and they won. Other species took notice. The Varth Collective, a group of insectoid miners, stopped sending resources to Vryn worlds. The Menos tribes, nomadic traders, began sharing intelligence about Vryn fleet movements with anyone who asked. The Threen, silicon-based life forms who had been conquered 6 centuries ago, started sabotaging Vryn facilities on their worlds. The Vryn tried to respond. They sent fleets to crush the rebellions, but something had changed. Their coordination was off. Their confidence was shaken. Ships that should have fought with perfect synchronization made mistakes. Captains who should have pressed attacks hesitated. The psychological wound from Epsilon Crossing ran deeper than anyone realized. Back on Earth, the reaction was complicated. Humanity learned about the Indomitables' battle from the 3 crew members who had taken escape pods before the attack. Their testimony reached Earth just hours after the galaxy-wide broadcasts began. The response was confusion, then shock, then debate. Some humans called it heroism. Others called it terrorism. The government was terrified of Vryn retaliation. They scrambled to distance themselves from Captain Chen's actions. They issued statements claiming the Indomitable acted without authorization. They offered to help hunt down any other rebel humans. It was a desperate attempt to avoid punishment. But human populations did not listen to their government. In colonies and stations across human space, people celebrated. They held vigils for the fallen crew. They painted the Indomitable's name on walls and ships. They told stories about Captain Chen and her impossible victory. The government could issue all the statements it wanted. The people knew what they believed. The Vryn never attacked Earth. They had bigger problems. Their empire was fragmenting. Subject species were rebelling across dozens of systems. The remaining Vryn fleet was stretched thin trying to maintain control. They had neither the time nor the resources to punish humanity properly. 6 months after the battle, the surviving crew members were found. The Keleth ships brought them to a neutral station in the Threshold sector. The humans had spent those months hiding, recovering, and wondering if they would be hunted forever. Instead, they found themselves famous. Representatives from 40 different species came to meet them. They brought requests for military advice, offers of alliance, and expressions of gratitude. The humans who had expected death or imprisonment found themselves treated like liberators. It was overwhelming. Among the survivors was Lieutenant Rita Park, the communications officer who lost her sister on New Terra. She stood in a conference room filled with aliens and could barely process what was happening. A Keleth elder thanked her for giving his people hope. A Varth worker offered her a crystal that represented honor in their culture. A Threen diplomat said humans had shown the galaxy how to be brave. Rita thought about her sister. She thought about Captain Chen. She thought about the 58 crew members who died on the Indomitable. Then she spoke. She said they did not do this for glory. They did it because someone had to. Because accepting tyranny was worse than dying free. Because silence in the face of evil was itself evil. Her words were recorded and spread throughout the galaxy. They became a rallying cry for the growing resistance movement. Different species, different worlds, but one message. Enough was enough. The Vryn hegemony fought to maintain control for 3 more years. They won some battles, they crushed some rebellions, but they could not win everywhere at once. Their empire, built on fear and myth, crumbled when those things disappeared. Each lost battle made them weaker. Each successful rebellion encouraged others. It was a slow collapse, but it was inevitable. Eventually, the Vryn homeworld itself faced uprising, not from conquered species, but from their own people. Young Vryn who questioned the old ways. Vryn who were tired of endless war to maintain an empire. Vryn who saw the writing on the wall and chose a different path. The hegemony formally dissolved 4 years after the Battle of Epsilon Crossing. The remaining Vryn territories reorganized into smaller, independent states. Some remained isolated. Others sought to join the new galactic community that was forming. It was messy and complicated and sometimes violent, but it was change. In the aftermath, hundreds of species came together to form a new government. They called it the Galactic Coalition. It was not perfect. It had no military. It had limited power, but it was built on cooperation instead of domination. Every member had an equal voice, including humanity. Earth's government, which had tried so hard to distance itself from Captain Chen, now claimed credit for her actions. They said she had been following secret orders all along. They said humanity had always planned to liberate the galaxy. The surviving crew members found this hilarious and infuriating, but they said nothing. History belonged to whoever wrote it down first. One person was still missing. Captain Sarah Chen. Her body was never found in the debris of Epsilon Crossing. Most assumed she died in the explosion with the rest of the bridge crew. Memorials were held. Statues were built. Her name became legend. 8 months after the battle, a damaged escape pod was found drifting at the extreme edge of the Epsilon system. It had been traveling on minimal power, its beacon too weak to detect until a Keleth patrol ship happened to pass nearby. Inside was a single occupant, barely alive, kept in stasis by failing medical systems. It was Sarah Chen. She had not been on the bridge during the final collision. Commander Rivera had knocked her unconscious and put her in an escape pod during the last minutes. He sealed it manually and launched it himself. Sarah was the captain. Someone needed to survive to tell the true story. Rivera made that choice for her. Sarah woke up in a Keleth medical facility. It took her 3 days to fully recover. When she learned what happened while she drifted in space, she did not know how to feel. The Vryn were broken. The galaxy was free, and she had slept through most of it. Escathar visited her personally. He told her that her sacrifice had saved billions of lives, that her courage had changed the course of history, that she was a hero to 400 species. Sarah listened and felt empty. She was not a hero. She was a mother who lost her daughter and a captain who lost her crew. Heroes were supposed to feel triumphant. She just felt tired, but the galaxy did not care about her feelings. They needed a symbol. They needed someone to represent the victory. So Sarah Chen, who wanted nothing more than to disappear, became the face of the new era. Earth recalled her home. There was talk of court-martial, but it never happened. Public opinion would not allow it. Instead, they held a ceremony. They gave her medals. They promoted her to admiral. They asked her to help build humanity's new military fleet. Sarah accepted the promotion. She had no choice, really. But she made them add one condition. Every ship in the new fleet would carry a memorial plaque listing the names of the Indomitable's crew. All 147 of them, the ones who survived and the ones who died, they would be remembered. That was not negotiable. The galaxy changed. It did not become peaceful. It did not become perfect. But it became free, and that was enough. 5 years after the Battle of Epsilon Crossing, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in a shipyard orbiting Mars. Around her, construction crews worked on 50 new vessels. These were not research ships with hidden weapons. These were warships built openly and proudly. Each one carried the name of someone who died on the Indomitable. The flagship was nearly complete. Sarah had insisted on its name personally. The UHSV Indomitable II. It was larger than the original, more powerful, better armored, but it carried the same spirit. The same message. Humans would not bow, would not break, would not accept tyranny. The galaxy had changed in 5 years. The Galactic Coalition now included 312 member species. They met regularly to discuss trade, territory disputes, and mutual defense. It was messy. Arguments were common, but wars were rare. Most species had decided that cooperation was better than conquest. The Vryn still existed, but their territory had shrunk to a handful of systems. Some Vryn states joined the coalition, others remained isolated, clinging to memories of their lost empire. A few became raiders and pirates. Most just tried to find their place in a galaxy that had moved on without them. It was a sad ending for a once great civilization, but it was the ending they earned. Humanity's role in this new galaxy was complex. Some species saw them as liberators and friends. Others were cautious. After all, humans destroyed 400 ships in a single battle. What else might they do if they felt threatened? Human diplomats worked hard to build trust. They shared technology. They offered aid to struggling colonies. They proved that the Indomitables' fight was about freedom, not conquest. But Sarah knew the truth. Peace was fragile. The galaxy was full of species, each with their own goals and histories. New conflicts would arise. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. That was why humanity needed a fleet, not to dominate, not to control, but to protect, to ensure that if someone tried to resurrect the old ways, humans would be ready. She walked through the construction areas, watching engineers install weapon systems and armor plating. These ships were being built with help from other species. The Kelith provided advanced sensor technology. The Varth contributed mining equipment that could double as emergency tools. The Threen shared their knowledge of energy distribution systems. It was a true cooperation. The fleet would belong to humanity, but it would be built by the galaxy. Lieutenant Rita Park found Sarah near the flagship's main engine. Rita was a captain now, assigned to command one of the new destroyers. She still had nightmares about New Terra, about her sister, but she channeled that pain into making sure nothing like that ever happened again. She was good at her job, the best according to her crew. Rita asked Sarah a question. Did she think they did the right thing? Looking back, with everything that happened, was the sacrifice worth it? Sarah took a long time to answer. She said that 58 people died on the Indomitable. That was 58 lives cut short. 58 families destroyed. 58 futures erased. No amount of political change or galactic freedom could bring them back. In that sense, the price was almost unbearable. But then she thought about New Terra's 4 million dead. About the billions living under Vryn rule. About all the species who suffered and died because nobody fought back. The Indomitable's crew chose their fate. They walked into that battle knowing the odds. The people the Vryn killed had no choice at all. So yes, Sarah said, it was worth it. Not because their deaths were acceptable, but because their sacrifice mattered. Because they proved that resistance was possible. Because they showed a galaxy full of oppressed people that they did not have to accept tyranny. That alone made it worth it, Rita nodded. She did not seem entirely satisfied with the answer, but she accepted it. Maybe that was all anyone could do. Accept that the past happened and try to build a better future. The Coalition headquarters was built on a neutral station called Haven. It was designed by multiple species, resulting in a structure that looked strange but somehow worked. The main council chamber could accommodate representatives from every member species, each with their own environmental requirements. It was a marvel of engineering and cooperation. Sarah attended a council session 2 weeks later. The topic was military cooperation. Some species wanted a unified coalition defense force. Others preferred to maintain independent militaries. The debate was heated. Humans argued for the independent approach. They had just escaped one empire. They were not eager to create another. Escathar, now a senior Kelith representative, supported the human position. He pointed out that strength came from diversity. A unified military would be powerful, yes, but it would also be vulnerable to corruption or control by a single faction. Independent fleets that cooperated were harder to corrupt, harder to control, and ultimately stronger, because they could adapt to different situations. The debate lasted 6 hours. In the end, the council voted to maintain independent militaries but establish mutual defense treaties. If one member was attacked, others would help. But each species controlled its own ships and made its own decisions. It was a compromise. Not perfect, but workable. After the session, several representatives approached Sarah. They wanted to talk about the Indomitable, about the battle, about how humanity found the courage to fight. Sarah was tired of these conversations. She had told the story 1,000 times, but she understood why people asked. They needed to know. They needed to believe that ordinary people could do extraordinary things. She told them what she always told them. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was acting despite fear. The Indomitable's crew was terrified. They knew they were going to die. But they went anyway because staying silent was worse than dying. Because accepting evil was worse than fighting it, even hopelessly. One of the representatives, a young Threen named Crystallis, asked if Sarah would do it again. Knowing what she knew now, knowing the cost, would she still give that order? Sarah looked at the young being for a long moment. Then she answered honestly, yes, without hesitation. The galaxy was free because 147 people refused to bow. That was a trade she would make every time. The UHSV Indomitable II launched 3 months later. It was a ceremony unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Representatives from 200 species attended. The shipyard was decorated with symbols and flags from across the galaxy. Speeches were made in dozens of languages. It was chaotic and beautiful and overwhelming. Sarah gave the final speech. She stood before a crowd of thousands and spoke simply. She said the first Indomitable proved something important. That tyranny could be fought. That empires could fall. That freedom was worth any price. This new ship, she said, would carry that lesson forward. It would protect the peace they fought so hard to achieve. And it would remind everyone, human and alien alike, that the strong had a duty to protect the weak, not to rule them. To protect them, the crowd cheered. Sarah felt uncomfortable with the attention. She was not a politician. She was a soldier who did what needed doing. But she understood the symbolism. The galaxy needed heroes, needed stories of resistance and victory. So she played her part. For the people who died, for the galaxy they saved, for the future they made possible. The Indomitable II lifted from its dock and began its first flight. 50 escort ships from 20 different species joined it. They flew in formation through human space, then into coalition territory. It was a show of unity, a demonstration that the galaxy had changed fundamentally. Sarah stood on the bridge of the flagship and watched the stars pass by. The bridge was different from the original ship. Larger, more sophisticated. But it felt the same somehow. Like she was home. Like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Her first officer approached. It was Commander Marcus Webb, a veteran who had lost his entire family to a Vryn raid 15 years ago. He asked for their first orders. Where should they go? What should they do? Sarah smiled. It was a rare expression for her these days. She said they would patrol the border regions, help colonies that needed assistance, show the galaxy that humanity's strength would be used to protect, not conquer. They would be what the Vryn never were. They would be guardians, not masters. The Indomitable II set course for the frontier. Behind it, 49 other human warships prepared to join the effort. Each one was named for a fallen crew member of the original ship. Each one carried a piece of that legacy forward. They would not be the last ships humanity built, but they would always be the first of the new era. The era humanity helped create. Across the galaxy, former subjects of the Vryn hegemony went about their lives. They worked. They loved. They raised children. They built futures. And when they looked up at the stars, they no longer saw the shadow of an empire. They saw possibility. They saw freedom. Sometimes late at night, Sarah would visit the memorial room on the flagship. It was a small chamber near the center of the ship. On the walls were plaques listing every crew member who served on the original Indomitable. Pictures, names, brief descriptions of who they were. Sarah would stand there and remember. Commander Rivera, who saved her life at the cost of his own. Dr. Tanaka, who kept systems running past all reasonable limits. The young ensign who was afraid but stayed anyway. The veteran sergeant who told jokes to keep morale up. All of them. Every single one, she made them a promise. Their sacrifice wouldn't 10 years after the Battle of Epsilon Crossing. The galaxy had settled into its new reality. The Galactic Coalition was now the dominant political force, though it governed through consensus rather than force. Trade flourished between species who had once been strangers or enemies. Scientific cooperation led to advances that benefited everyone, Wars still happened, but they were smaller, localized, and increasingly other coalition members stepped in to mediate before conflicts escalated. Humanity's fleet had grown to 200 ships, not the largest in the galaxy but among the most respected. Human captains were known for their adaptability and willingness to fight against long odds. Other species learned from human tactics. The idea of asymmetric warfare, of using intelligence and unpredictability to overcome superior force, spread throughout the galaxy. The Vrin's old strategy of overwhelming power was replaced by something more subtle and effective. Admiral Sarah Chen was 62 years old now. Her hair was completely white. She moved a bit slower than before, but her mind remained sharp. She commanded the Coalition Defense Initiative, a voluntary organization that coordinated military responses to threats against member species. It was not a unified military. Each species retained control of their own ships, but when needed, they could work together with devastating efficiency. The initiative was tested 3 years after its formation. A group of Vrin extremists calling themselves the Crystal Restoration attempted to restart their empire. They had gathered a fleet of 300 ships, mostly old hegemony vessels they had kept hidden. They struck at a Calith colony world, killing thousands in a surprise attack. The Coalition's response was immediate. Within 6 hours, ships from 40 species arrived at the colony. The human contingent was led by Captain Rita Park and her destroyer, the UHSV Defiant. The Kelith brought their entire home fleet. The Varth sent mining ships converted for combat. Even some peaceful Threen colonies sent support vessels. The Crystal Restoration expected to fight Kelith ships alone. Instead, they faced a combined force of 800 vessels representing the entire galaxy. The battle was brief. The extremists were offered one chance to surrender. When they refused, the Coalition fleet disabled their ships with minimal casualties. The extremist leaders were captured and tried for war crimes. It sent a clear message. The galaxy would not return to the old ways. Sarah watched that battle from the bridge of the Indomitable II. She did not need to give many orders. The Coalition forces worked together naturally after years of joint training and exercises. Each species contributed its strengths. Kelith sensors detected the enemy first. Varth ships blocked escape routes. Threen vessels jammed communications. Human ships led the final assault. It was beautiful in a way. Not the violence, but the cooperation. 300 species working as one. After the battle, Sarah received a message from an unexpected source. It came from a Vrin leader named Crystal Song at Dawn. He was one of the younger Vrin who had grown up after the fall of the hegemony. He thanked Sarah for stopping the extremists. He said that his generation wanted to move forward, not backward. They wanted to be part of the galaxy, not its masters. He asked if humans could forgive the Vrin for their past crimes. Sarah thought about that question for a long time before responding. Could she forgive the species that killed her daughter? That destroyed New Terra? That ruled through fear and violence for 12,000 years? It was not an easy question. Forgiveness was complicated when the wounds ran so deep. She wrote back honestly. She said she could not speak for all humanity. She could only speak for herself. And the truth was that she would never forget what the Vrin did. Never stop mourning the lives they took. But she also understood that Crystal Song at Dawn and his generation were not responsible for those crimes. They inherited a terrible legacy, but they did not create it. Forgiveness might not be possible, Sarah wrote, but coexistence was. If the young Vrin wanted to build something better, humans would help. Not because they forgot the past, but because they believed in the possibility of a better future. That was what the Indomitable fought for. Not revenge, not domination, but the chance for everyone to choose a different path. The message became public. It sparked debates across the galaxy. Some said Sarah was too forgiving. Others said she was not forgiving enough. But most understood what she meant. The past mattered. But it could not be changed. All anyone could do was try to make the present better. On the 20th anniversary of the Battle of Epsilon Crossing, a massive memorial was unveiled at Haven Station. It was designed by artists from 50 different species. The centerpiece was a sculpture of the original Indomitable, rendered in crystal and metal. Around it were plaques listing the names of all who died in the battle, as well as those who died fighting for freedom in the years that followed. The dedication ceremony was attended by thousands. Survivors from the original crew were there, older now but still proud. Families of the fallen came to honor their loved ones. Representatives from every coalition species attended to pay their respects. It was the largest gathering in galactic history. Sarah was asked to give the keynote speech. She stood before the memorial and looked at the names carved into the wall. Commander Rivera, Dr. Tanaka, Lieutenant Park's sister, her own daughter Maya, who died years before the Indomitable's final battle, but whose death set everything in motion. So many names, so many lives cut short. She spoke softly, but her voice carried through the sound system. She said that memorials were important. They helped people remember. But the best memorial was not a statue or a plaque. The best memorial was the galaxy they had built. A galaxy where hundreds of species lived as equals, where cooperation replaced domination, where freedom was not just a word but a reality. The crew of the Indomitable did not die to be remembered, Sarah said. They died so that others could live freely. Every child born on a world no longer controlled by tyrants was their true memorial. Every species that chose its own destiny was their legacy. Every person who stood up against injustice was continuing their work. She ended with a challenge. She told the crowd that the galaxy would always face threats. New empires would rise. New tyrants would seek power. But now everyone knew the truth. Resistance was possible. Victory was possible. One ship proved that at Epsilon Crossing. Imagine what millions of ships could do. Imagine what billions of people could do if they stood together. The crowd stood in silence after she finished. Then someone started applauding. It spread through the gathering until thousands were cheering. Sarah stepped back from the podium and looked at the memorial. She touched the wall where her daughter's name was carved. Then she touched the section listing the Indomitable's crew. "We did it," she whispered. "We proved we belong here. We proved that freedom matters more than life. We changed everything." Later that evening, Sarah stood alone on an observation deck of the Indomitable 2. The ship was docked at Haven Station for the ceremony. Through the windows, she could see ships from dozens of species coming and going. Trade vessels, passenger liners, scientific expeditions, military patrols. All of them moving freely through space that had once been controlled absolutely by the Vrin. Captain Rita Park joined her. Rita commanded her own cruiser now, the UHSV Liberty. She had grown into a fine officer, strong, compassionate, willing to make hard choices but always questioning whether those choices were right. Sarah was proud of her. Rita asked Sarah what she thought about when she looked at the stars now. Sarah smiled. She said she used to see danger everywhere, threats, enemies, battles waiting to happen. But now she saw possibility. She saw a galaxy full of different people trying to make better lives. She saw cooperation where there used to be conquest. She saw hope. That did not mean the danger was gone, Sarah added. It never would be. But now they were ready for it. Now they had allies. Now they had proof that even the mightiest empire could fall if enough people said no. Rita nodded. She asked one more question. What would Sarah do now? She had accomplished everything. Freed the galaxy, built a fleet, established a defense initiative. What was left? Sarah laughed. It was a genuine laugh, something rare for her. She said there was always more work to do, always new threats, always new problems. But she was getting old. Eventually, someone else would need to take over. Someone from the generation that grew up in this free galaxy. Someone who understood both the cost of freedom and the necessity of protecting it. She looked at Rita meaningfully. Rita understood immediately. She protested. She was not ready. She was too young. She did not have Sarah's experience or wisdom. Sarah shook her head. Nobody was ever ready for leadership. Nobody ever felt worthy. But leadership was not about being perfect. It was about caring enough to try, and Rita cared. That was what mattered. The conversation ended when alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. Sarah and Rita rushed to the command center. The displays showed an emergency situation at the edge of Koa,